Welcome back to the Team to Beat Miami Heat podcast. My name is Amir. Before I get into today's episode, I just want to thank everybody for following the podcast on Spotify. Also, I want to thank everybody for watching and subscribing to the YouTube channel. So if you are on YouTube watching this right now, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. So thank you so much. So for today's episode, I want to talk about the NBA draft. This was my first draft video. And the draft is what? Is it on the 25th or 26th, Neil?
26th.
Okay, so we're a few weeks away from the NBA draft. I don't watch college and I don't know much about the draft. I haven't done my research. I've done a little bit of research and watch other YouTube, Miami Heat content creators posting their videos around the draft and around the 15th pick and projecting what the Miami Heat may pick. And so I figured, since I don't know shit about college, let me invite my friend Neil back to the channel to talk about this year's NBA draft. And more specifically, Neil, I want to talk about guards. So right now, the Miami Heat desperately need a backup point guard, I would say. We also need some bigs. We need some functional size. We need to upgrade in that area because Bam Adebayo is our 6'9" undersized center for the past few years. And so, but for this episode, I want to talk about how the Miami Heat can use the 15th pick in this year's draft to get a backup point guard or even shooting guard, like based on, I guess, what's the best available projected around that area. So right now we have Tyler and Terry Rozier, so we don't have a true point guard. Both are very similar, not very defensive minded guards, but good scorers, undersized. And backups, we had Patty Mills, which was horrible and egregious that he was playing in 2024 in the NBA playoffs because Terry Rozier was out and Jimmy Butler. And he was horrendous. And we had DeLon Wright, who wasn't too bad, but both are free agents right now, so we don't technically have any backups. So, Neil, Miami Heat are drafting number 15. Give me a few guys you think would be a good fit for this Miami Heat team at the guard position.
Well, thanks for having me, Amir. Appreciate you having the opportunity to talk. So I'll just start by saying this draft is pretty weak. Usually you can at least bank on at least one or two players, but this draft doesn't seem to have that. So maybe if the Heat can use some of their expertise with finding undervalued players, they could really hit a home run relative to where they're actually taking slots in the draft. So I'll start by saying that at 15, I was looking through some of the mock drafts and the top prospects available. One guy that seems kind of interesting is Isaiah Collier out of USC. He's a guy who was really he was hyped coming out of high school, and then USC kind of went to shit. We know about what happened with Bronny. It was just a big circus, and they really underperformed their expectation. But this guy Collier has a lot of talent, and he could actually serve a need that you're talking about as it relates to a backup point guard. So I'll start with him as a potential option. Other players that are attainable based on how teams are going is Devin Carter out of Providence. And also there was one other person I wanted, Jared McCain out of Duke. So I think one of those three could be available for the Heat at 15. Collier probably had the most hype coming out of high school. His year in college didn't exactly live up to as much hype because he was supposed to be like a top 5 pick, and then he dropped down to 15.
Yeah,
and then
his stats look good: 16 points, 3 rebounds, 4.3 assists. Doesn't look terrible. Was he just so he was a freshman? He's leaving after just 1 year.
Yeah, so USC had a lot of drama. Like they got rid of their coach, the whole Bronny situation. He had like a cardiac arrest.
I remember that.
Start with USC really was hampered, and I think it affected the whole team. A lot of the players were just kind of looking at it like a gap year to bigger and better things. USC is pretty much cleaning house with a new coach who's bringing in an entirely new roster. So I think if you're able to grant like a mulligan for a player like Isaiah Collier, he actually had a lot of hype coming out of high school, and he's not slated to be one of the earlier draft picks in the lottery. So that gives an opportunity for the Heat to kind of grab someone at great value. I would kind of relate it to Cam Whitmore. I don't know if you remember him from last year's draft. He had the talent of a top 5 pick, but then he fell all the way down to like the 18-20 range, and then Houston got him. And they kind of like what they've seen from him, but it's still a little bit early to make a designation on where he's going. I think Isaiah Collier has a lot of similarities to what Cam Whitmore did last year.
Got it. What about Devin Carter? He's also someone
Devin Carter he's a guy who I think would fit the Heat culture in terms of you always know he's a dog. He got better every single year he was in college, and by the end of his college career, like he was doing everything possible to try to single-handedly lift Providence into relevancy. So going into the Heat culture where he can kind of refine his game, figure out what his niche is, that would be good. He's more of like a 2, like a scoring guard. I know you mentioned you were looking for more of like a point guard, but Devin Carter is, I think, based on what he was able to do in college in terms of maximizing his talent, he would kind of be a good contrast to what Collier is, because Collier has the gifts. He just kind of has to put it together like mentally and buying into Miami's program, whereas you won't really have those kind of options with or those problems with Devin Carter. Devin Carter, he's going to make the most out of everything that he has. Collier has like the physical gifts. He just kind of needs to be under a good program and have good guidance. That's how I would kind of describe those two.
What did Carter average in college? Do you know?
He was probably pushing 20 a game. His last year at Providence, he was probably pushing 20 a game.
That's huge. I mean, the Miami Heat were one of the worst.
And the Big East was like a very So the Big East had plenty of talent, and Devin Carter, I think, was the player of the year in that conference because you had like UConn. UConn won the championship, but they had a bunch of like great players that kind of all gave you like 13 to 15. So none of them stood out when it was like time to vote on player of the year for the conference. But Devin Carter was single-handedly carrying Providence to try to get into the tournament, and he was putting up like some really big stat lines.
You know his dad is?
You told me this already, Anthony Carter?
Yep. Born in Miami, Florida. Dad was a Miami Heat. Obviously, he fits that Miami Heat culture, right? So he probably was going to the games when he was younger, possibly. How long ago did Anthony Carter play on the Heat? Back in, because Tim Hardaway's back up, so this is like 2000s, late 90s, 2000s probably. So 2001 or so. I don't know. I can't remember. But Anthony Carter was also an assistant coach on the Miami Heat. Most recently, I think he went to the Grizzlies, and is still a assistant in the NBA. So that would make a lot of sense. But the issue, I think, there's rumors that a lottery team suggested they want to pick him or promised that they would pick him. So what is lottery? 13 or 14? 14? Top 14?
14, yeah.
So it sounds like he might not be available. But I think he would be a good fit. Obviously, he's been linked to Miami. Who was the third guy you mentioned earlier? The last guy that you think would be
Jared McCain out of Duke.
Yeah, he's a really good shooter, right? Apparently.
He's a good shooter. I think he might be a little bit undersized, but he could potentially work also for what the Heat are looking for in terms of like a backup point guard. And really, if you're looking for shooting, McCain is a good option also. So there's like 3 legitimate matches for what Miami's needs are in that range of the draft. Like you're not hoping that some guy falls 10 spots or something in the draft. These are all, you're very likely to get the opportunity to draft one of these 3 guys.
What's McCain projected to go at? Like what area?
So I'm looking at this guy. He's a draft analyst for ESPN, Jonathan Givony. He just rated the prospects in order, and he had McCain at 15, Devin Carter at 13, and then Isaiah Collier at 22.
Okay, so kind of like what I said, right? I think Carter's most likely going to be a top 14 guy. So most likely it sounds like, according to the analysts, which they're not always correct, Collier probably is going to be the most likely guy that's going to be there of the three. So, okay. Yeah. I mean, I have never heard of Jared McCain or any of these guys, honestly. I never even
Mhm.
knew Anthony Carter's son played in college. So, I'm going to trust and value your opinion. And of the three, though, which one do you think Miami should pick? Like, if you're Miami, not just you, like, which one do you think they would go with if all three were available?
So, based on the fact that Carter is rated highest by the draft expert, he has ties to Miami through his dad, and he is a Heat culture type player. I would probably say Carter would probably be the top pick, and then I'd go Collier number two, and then Jared McCain number three.
Yeah, and especially if you keep Jimmy, something like, I mean, there's all these rumors out there. I'm sure you've heard. Jimmy wants a max extension. Pat Riley said we can wait and see. There's no rush. You've missed a lot of games. Like you load manage too much. He didn't say those direct words, but he talked about his availability because he's never played more than 64 games with the Miami Heat. So he's missing 15 to 25 games every season, each year. And they might extend him, they might trade him. Who knows? They might wait and see. He has, one guaranteed year. He has a player option after next season. So if we do keep Jimmy, though, I think the Heat would need a ready now type player, kind of like Hawk has. Like he was a 4-year player. Carter is a 3-year, a junior. He played 3 seasons. So if we're going to use the three dreaded words that every Miami Heat fan hates to hear, run it back again with slight modifications and not getting another superstar or all-star or whale this offseason, right? Because it's going to be very unlikely we get actually Donovan Mitchell or a Trey Young. It's just really hard to acquire all-stars, right? It doesn't happen too often, and usually when superstars want to get traded, they usually get to go where they want to go, right? Unless you're Damian Lillard and you ruin it by not being James Harden light. You don't even have to be James Harden and burn every damn bridge, and be a diva like, but he could have put up more of a fuss and got to Miami. No one's doing that right now and saying directly they want to go to the Heat. Like, so it might be extremely difficult to get any of these players. And there's always new guys that are speculated to be moved, and every Heat fan is hoping and dreaming that these guys get traded and request Miami, like Larry Markkinen. People are talking about him, but has he requested a trade? Has Jazz said he's on the block? Not really. So anyway, I think Devin would be a good fit, obviously, because of what you said, the ties, defensive minded, and a pretty good scorer. So I'm open minded to that. So I'll go with your opinion.
Trey Young's actually an interesting point that you bring up. Do you think? I mean, Atlanta might try to separate the DeJounte Murray Trey Young pairing because that's not going anywhere. They have the
Yeah,
number one pick in the draft. Do you think they would consider trading Trey Young to get some combination of younger Heat players? Like, how would you receive that if you could get like Trey Young for Tyler Hero and maybe one younger player, and then you have like Trey Young and Jimmy Butler?
I would do it for sure in a heartbeat. Like I hate Trey Young, but like you got to do it. Tyler, Jaime, and maybe 2 picks. Like
Oh, so you give
that.
up a Jaime too.
I mean, you'd probably have to give up one or another, like realistically, like unless they're like, okay, give us Duncan, Tyler, and 2 picks. I'd probably do that. More, I'd rather do that honestly, because Duncan has been good, but you know he like has reached his ceiling to a certain degree, right? Like even though he's improving and not just a 3-point specialist, but he still has a pretty hefty contract right now, and we need to unload 2 of the 5 high contracts we have on our team. Terry 25, Tyler 30, Duncan 20, Jimmy 40 something next year, Bam 30 something next year. Like if we want to like have some sort of flexible future, we need to get rid of like 2 of those guys realistically. Like if not this offseason, after next year, right? Next offseason. So Duncan has 2 more seasons left, 40 million. Like just
That'd be a
maybe
huge solid from Atlanta if they took on Duncan Robinson and asked for Tyler Hero to get Trey
take
Young.
and they take the extra money, right? Because Trey is making, I don't know how much he's making, but I don't think he's making as much as, I don't think he's making 50 million, right? Because
Much as like, excuse me, as much as Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson.
Duncan and Tyler are making 50 combined. Like Trey Young is what do you think
Trey Young's probably not making that yet.
he's probably making like 38 or something, right? Right now per season. Let me look it up before we hop off. Trey Young salary 43. And he will, yeah, so 43. So close, not too much. So yeah, that'd be a good trade for Miami, honestly. Like I would miss Duncan Robinson, but shedding that salary of those two, so like getting 7 million extra in cap space, because the Hawks I think would be able to, they're not a first apron team, they're not in the first luxury tax like Miami is, so you would get a all-star and you would save $7 million, like, and he's just one of the best offensive players in the NBA. He averaged 25 a game last year and 11 assists, like one of the best playmakers. So, but
He's a
anyway,
lot younger than Dame too, so
that too, he's only 26 or 25, so which is shocking. But anyway, that's all I had for this draft prospect video. Thanks for hopping on, Neil. Appreciate the time.
see ya.